Naples, Florida is probably one of the most incredible places you can live if you're wealthy and can afford it. It's also one of the safest cities you could think of where you probably don't need to be armed. In fact, the biggest danger a rapper would face here is dealing with law enforcement. Frank Venegas, the island boy, is currently in custody in Naples at the Kodiyakredd County Jail for gun and drug charges. Notice it says in custody. That means he hasn't been bailed out. Allegedly, he was in a Corvette on the intersection of Oilwell Road and Immokalee Road, where he failed to make a stop at a stop sign rolling through the intersection, giving the police officer a reason to detain him. We're going to talk a little bit about his charges later on in the video, but for now, I just want to put you guys in the setting. According to the Kodiyakredd County property appraiser, the Venegases, a Spanish last name that isn't too common, own a property in the vicinity, so it's likely that he was leaving a family member's home or that he was residing there. Free legal advice here: if you're famous, don't put your last name on the property appraiser website. Put your properties in an LLC, a fund, a family trust fund. I don't know what type of legal entity you could create to put your stuff there, so that your last name isn't attached to the property appraiser. I mean, if you're armed, it would most likely suggest that you're concerned about your safety. And if you're concerned about the safety of your family, the last thing you want to do is have your family's last name end up on the property appraiser website. I mean, that's basic fame 101. I'm not sure why these guys are moving so recklessly on one end, but then acting like they have to be armed to protect themselves on the other. We're going to blur out the specific street names just for their privacy, but it appears that he has a residence, or his family has a residence somewhere in this area, which would make sense. After all, he is Cuban American, and this area is a large Cuban community where you can buy incredible Latin foods at just about any corner store or supermarket. This part of Naples is known as the Estates, and it would be a clear choice for anybody Hispanic who's wealthy to live in. After all, it is an affluent Hispanic area with plenty of places to buy Latin food. This area is also extraordinarily safe, not the type of place you would exactly need to be armed to begin with. After all, it's mostly a nice rural area and one of the best cities to live in the United States. It's not a surprise that they would be in this area, as commonly people on social media are posting images of the island boys in this part of Naples. It's pretty clear that they likely live in this area. And by they, we mean Frank, because there's two of them. It would be a clear choice for them to be. Lots of good Cuban restaurants, extraordinarily safe area. The people here aren't gonna bother him. He can just go to restaurants and stores and live his best celebrity lifestyle in a city where celebrities and money are common. It's a no-brainer for him to reside in this area. But if there's something this area is known for, is some of the worst police profiling anywhere in Florida. And while it may be a safe place for a celebrity, it's a horrible place to look like the type of person law enforcement would want to pull over. In this part of the rural estates, people drive brand new cars and live in brand new luxury houses behind big tall fences. This is the type of area where you would think somebody wouldn't get into trouble. But as we dig deeper into the particular street where the property was at, we discover that not everything is peaceful in this part of Naples, Florida. Assuming that he was leaving the Venegas property, and assuming that this Venegas property is related to the Island Boys, we can see that right across the street from them is a property that says Gun Lives Matter. Literally, this is a legitimate weapons dealer. Keep in mind that he was charged with possession of an unlicensed weapon. Allegedly, it was a gun that had no serial number. Now, before this neighbor's house was even built, they were already snitching on him, complaining that they had built an illegal pond in the backyard, that the new construction was flooding their property. This code enforcement complaint also stipulates that the builder dug a hole in the backyard to bury the garbage from the construction site instead of getting a dumpster. A very common practice in Naples by builders and developers is to not have to pay to get rid of the garbage, so they just dig a hole and bury all the garbage in the backyard. Obviously, this is an illegal practice, but it happens very often in this part of Naples. Fast forward to January the 22nd, just a month ago. This same exact property now gets a complaint that there's an illegal pond in the backyard. probably the same pond that was used to build the foundation of the home and where the garbage from the construction site would have been buried. The Venegas property itself, less than a year ago, was snitched out by somebody who said that they had put up a fence illegally. That means that they were putting up a fence, and as they were putting up the fence, a fairly quick process, one of the neighbors picked up the phone and snitched out to the Kodiyakredd County Code Enforcement and said, hey, these people are putting up a fence illegally. Well, turns out they had actually pulled permits for the fence and they weren't doing anything illegally. I tell you all this so that you can understand the type of snitch-a-thon that these people in Naples go on, where the neighbors are always nosy, they're always in your business, and they're always looking for somebody to bother. Even before a new home is built, the snitch-a-thon has already started with people calling the county and code enforcement and even the cops on anything they see that looks out of place. If there's one way you could describe living in Naples, Florida, it's living in the middle of a snitch-a-thon where everybody's calling the cops, code enforcement on anything they see. But I want to give you guys all those background details of the community where he's living in, just so you can have an idea the type of nosy people that you have out here. And while driving around in a convertible Corvette with freaking dreadlocks covered in tattoos might seem cool to you, doing that in Naples, Florida is definitely going to get you some police attention. Now, knowing that the neighborhood is already in the middle of a full-on snitch-a-thon, calling the county even for a fence going up, it would give me an idea that most likely these individuals with their city boy attitude have been irritating these people in this neighborhood for a while. And that the cops that pulled him over could even be friends with somebody back on that street where they live that they've been irritating needlessly. After all, it is Naples, Florida, where people have more time on their hands than they know what to do with, leading to situations like this where entire neighborhoods go on snitch-a-thons. So if he thought he was going to be driving around Naples, Florida with dreadlocks, blasting music, covered in tattoos, that might have been a fatal mistake if you're carrying an illegal gun and drugs in the vehicle. Now here's where things get dicey. They were just pulled over for blowing a stop sign, but why did law enforcement have to bring a dog to search the vehicle? This is police profiling, and in Naples, Florida, I lived there for 20 years. The Island Boys are going to find out what I already knew and what other YouTube creators like Hood Fishing already know, that if you are a minority in Naples area, you're constantly being profiled by law enforcement. I mean, I just about built a YouTube channel just showing you guys how much I was being harassed in Naples on a constant basis. It didn't matter if you were fishing or doing anything legitimate, law enforcement would always be profiling you. If you were to talk to a white person in Naples, perhaps they've never got pulled over, but talk to any black or Hispanic person and they're constantly dealing with situations like this that I started to record, and it blew up my YouTube channel. Over the 20 years that I lived in Naples, Florida, I had hundreds of police encounters, most of the time just minding my own business and having law enforcement come up to me and search me and harass me needlessly. This is what life in Naples, Florida is like. If you've been following my YouTube channel for a while, you may know that when I lived in Naples, this was a constant problem where it didn't matter what you were doing, you were constantly being harassed by law enforcement. Now, my behaviors and practices are the same today as they were back then, and I've never been pulled over in Manatee County or Sarasota County for anything. It just goes to show that Naples is the type of place where the police is always looking to profile somebody that doesn't fit the profile they want in their community. And like I've said, I've lived in the Sarasota, Manatee County area now for almost 3 years, and I haven't once been detained or bothered by law enforcement. While Naples is a beautiful, safe, and clean city, if there's one thing that is absolutely horrendous about Naples, is how they look upon other people that they don't want in their community as complete criminals, and you're constantly being targeted by law enforcement. And this is probably what Frank Venegas is starting to figure out about Naples, is that the people here are constantly looking for trouble and constantly calling law enforcement and causing all types of issues. Me, after living in Naples for 20 years, I would know for a fact that the last thing you ever want to do in Naples is have possession of something illegal, especially if you're covered in tattoos and wearing dreadlocks. Now, he was charged with possession of a prescription medication without a prescription and possession of an altered firearm. What this young man may have failed to notice that in Naples, Florida, you're more likely to get pulled over and detained by law enforcement and searched needlessly than you are to need a weapon that is illicit to defend yourself from somebody trying to hurt you that nobody can find out about. This was a real fatal miscalculation because in Naples, Florida, nobody is going to hurt you. It doesn't matter how much of a hated celebrity you are, how famous you are, or how notable you are. In Naples, Florida, nobody was going to hurt you. But law enforcement was going to search you. It just seems like a really, really stupid miscalculation on his part to think that you could ride around Naples, Florida with anything illegal as a dreadlock tattooed looking gangster and not have law enforcement come bother you. If there's one thing that I learned while living in Naples, Florida about law enforcement is if they want to waste your time, you can waste theirs. I made corny jokes, told them I had weapons on me that I didn't have and couldn't remember where they were, making them waste their time looking for weapons that didn't exist. Other times, they would just get scared when they heard I had a weapon and would leave. Regardless, the case in Naples, Florida is that law enforcement is going to do everything they can to irritate you because after all, what they really want is you to leave their community. After hundreds of experiences with law enforcement in Naples, Florida, I learned to make as much of a mockery out of them as they made out of me, uploading their little rants to YouTube, laughing at their behaviors and their obvious misperformance as they're clearly profiling you for being out of place. And this is perhaps what this individual may not have known about the community he's living in, that in Naples, Florida, law enforcement is always going to be bothering you if you don't look the way they want you to look. A good look for him would have had nothing illegal in the car but a camera recording these clown cops that were harassing him and uploading it to social media, clowning the fact that they searched him and found nothing with no real pretext, which is what I started to do in Naples, Florida. And eventually word got around and they stopped bothering me because they figured out that they were going to end up getting clowned on the internet. What he didn't realize is that this isn't West Palm Beach or Miami, where the crap he thinks he's at. Over here in Naples, Florida, you don't need to be armed. You need to be on the lookout for any type of entrapment that somebody may set in front of you. May it be from code enforcement, may it be from police profiling, to make sure that you're 2 steps ahead of whatever deceitful thing they have hidden in your path. That's what we call legally an encumbrance. It's a trap that's hidden in front of you, very well concealed, so that you don't notice the danger attached to it. Now, already on the news, there's many variations of the story. Some people say it was a yellow Corvette. Some people say it was a blue Corvette. But what is clear is this. He was arrested in Naples, Florida on Oilwell and Immokalee Road in a Corvette, and he had possession of pills he shouldn't have had and a weapon that wasn't registered. And this is the type of crappery that just isn't gonna fly in Naples, Florida. If he wanted prescriptions, he could have got them legally from a doctor. And if he wanted to feel secure, he could have been in a Yukon with bulletproof windows. In a world that's rigged up against you, you gotta know how to play the game rather than playing yourself. In the case of this situation, it seems like he played himself, driving around Naples, Florida erratically, thinking that law enforcement wasn't gonna spot him, search him, and put him away for a good bit. For young people from a marginalized background, they don't realize that there's as many traps in suburban life laid out for them as they were back in the inner city places where they come from. And if there's one thing that I've learned is that sometimes you try to get away from the inner city traps you're from, but you find out that in the suburbia, there's another trap laid out for you. These suburban and rich people in Naples are always machinating some type of device and concealment to entrap other people. In the case of Naples, Florida, this is the type of place where your neighbors are constantly calling the cops and code enforcement on you for anything they see. And if you're drawing attention to yourself, you're definitely going to find it in Naples, Florida, a place that's known for prejudiced views of anything that doesn't fit the profile that they want to see in their community. So it isn't a surprise that this young kid got caught up with something of this nature living in Naples, Florida. Now, Collier County Sheriff's Office did not charge him with paraphernalia. Some of the stories going around the internet said that he had a straw inside a hat, which means it was crushing up the pills. Well, I don't know if this is true or not. The Collier County Sheriff's Office did not include paraphernalia in the arrest report. These charges are pretty serious, and they're going to have him jammed up for a little bit. He's still in custody in the Collier County Jail, which I would assume makes absolutely no sense considering the fact he should have been bailed out by now. Despite Collier County being at least 70% white, 60 to 80% of the arrests right now in this county are minorities. And that wasn't the case maybe a year or two ago. And this story kind of mirrors many other stories of people who get a little bit of money and affluence and move to the suburbs only to find that there's a whole set of new problems for them in this environment. Where people are paranoid of other people in their community, they're afraid of other people going after their money or their safety, and they're constantly, with too much time on their hands, vinculating people to criminal activity when it isn't the case, calling law enforcement, calling code enforcement, and anything they can to scrutinize the lives of other people because they have too much time on their hands. One of the worst things about Naples, Florida is that you have people that have a lot of money, but they have very little occupation. They don't have too many hobbies, they don't have goals, they don't have aspirations, they don't have anything that they're doing actively in their lives. They're just people with a lot of money and, well, nothing good to do with their times. They're not producing anything, they're not contributing anything to society. In fact, they're at the point in their lives where they just try to get everything they can out of other people. So while Naples, Florida is a very safe place, it's also a type of place that will literally drain the life out of you, of dealing with individuals that have lack of occupation and more interest in the lives of people around them than in their own. Why this young man thought he needed to be armed is beyond me. Naples, Florida is the type of place where literally nobody is going to hurt you except for law enforcement if you're carrying something you're not supposed to. As noted by other people on social media, these young individuals, despite having influencing power and a lot of fame, are still dealing with a lot of addiction problems. And this addiction is what leads them to many of the problems they have. Many people glamorize the lifestyle of these individuals who are wealthy and powerful and known through social media for their antics, as if these were something admirable to be. But in reality, they're in a pretty sad state, constantly having issues with law enforcement, antics that lead them to getting arrested, issues with their family and friends, and of course, let's not forget an addiction that is swallowing up their youth. They could be really successful, they're in a position to do so, yet instead of being out there making big moves and enjoying the money that comes from their fame and expanding their careers, they're getting caught up with completely unnecessary criminal cases that are mostly spiraled by their addiction. In Naples, Florida, these people are rich, and they don't want some crackhead-looking kid running around with guns and weapons in their safe community. You can acquire money, but just because you have money doesn't mean that people that have money alike are going to want you in their community when you're acting like you're still in the hood. And while many people look up to these celebrities as something to be, the truth is that their condition is miserable. They've had opportunities that most of us will never have to be famous, to be influencers, and to make a lot of money on social media. But despite the fact that life has given them a break, instead of utilizing it to make their lives better and that of the people around them, they've used it to bring detriment to themselves. I hope these young kids really get their act together. It's a good decision that they moved to Naples, Florida, a safe and clean city, but they still have too many attachments of the world behind them that made them famous to begin with. These individual kids have a lot of potential and they can really make a good thing out of their fame. But if they continue having these types of antics and situations, they're going to find that their fame is more of a punishment than a reward. And this should be an example to all of us that no matter how well off you are economically, you can still end up in a situation where your addiction brings you and those around you to pain and harm. I really hope these young kids get their crap together and learn that life is better without addiction and that they can really have a more fulfilling and enjoyable life if they're able to get rid of their habits like addiction and the lifestyle that makes them think that they have to be armed. Once you reach wealth and success, all that stuff becomes completely irrelevant. Once you're living in Naples, Florida and driving around in a Corvette, none of that street stuff matters anymore. You should be enjoying your life and the great material things that life has given you, not going to jail for a weapon that, after all, would not be used for anything other than sending you off to prison. I don't know what personal problems this young kid thinks he has that makes him believe he needs to be armed, but after living in Naples for 20 years, most of it is probably just paranoia from his own addiction. Naples, Florida may be a great and safe place to live, but you have to be keenly aware that there's people here with money and wealth that don't want you, a young Hispanic person, to have the same thing. It really bothers them that you are able to have it as well, and well, now you just gave them a reason to explain their hate. See, what happens is you have to adapt to this pressure. Because if you do what they want you to do, which is to be armed and with drugs and be a complete mess up, then you're going ahead and proving their point that you can't be successful. In this city of Naples, they're going to profile you whether you did something bad or not. So why would you go ahead and give them a reason to justify their profiling behavior? In my case, they've detained me hundreds of times, and I've always walked away laughing knowing that they're wasting their time. And there's nothing I can do to stop them from being racist piece of crap profilers, but I can walk away knowing that I'm not going to fall for their trap. If you stay clean, you don't have anything illegal, it doesn't matter how much they profile you, chances are they're not going to be able to jam you up big time. Sure, they might waste your time and jam you up on small infractions or little details, but they'll never be able to send you away for a while. After living in Naples, Florida for as long as I have, I know for a fact that these young kids were being profiled, but he wasn't peeping the game and figuring out how he needed to be moving to avert the encumbrances that were heading his way. You're already coming from a position where they don't want to see you shine. They don't want to see you being successful. They don't want to see you buying a house in the estates. They don't want to see you in a bright colored Corvette. They don't want to see you wearing fancy clothes. They already are bothered by the notion that you are able to live a lavish lifestyle. So you know how they're coming at you already, which means you have to anticipate the way problems are really going to unfold in your path. But when your vision is clouded by addiction, you're not able to enjoy even the great things that life gives you. You know, it's really easy when you have a little bit of fame and success or a little bit of notoriety. When you're out in your community to get in trouble, the propensity is much higher than somebody who isn't in that position, which means you have to be on the lookout even more for any type of trap or situation that can leave you throwing away everything that you've worked for, losing everything you've done simply because in a moment of lack of control or misjudgment, you slip up and you watch everything that you've worked for go to crap. Naples, Florida is a very affluent place, and it isn't exactly a bad thing for him to put himself in this environment. But to live in this environment of wealthy people who are constantly being prejudiced, you got to know how to move, how not to move, and how to really get up on people in a way that doesn't get up on you.